The distant Earth glowed like a jewel against the backdrop of space as Selena Novak stared through the observation deck's window of the International Xenological Research Station. Her delicate silver-tinted fingers traced the cool glass, leaving no prints, one of many traits that made her different from her human colleagues. The subtle shimmer of her skin caught the starlight, a reminder of her true nature, carefully hidden beneath the holographic disguise she wore daily. 28 years, 2 months, and 15 days. That's all the time she had left before the genetic curse of her species would claim her life. The Nixians, once a proud race of explorers and scientists, now faced extinction due to an evolutionary quirk that caused their cellular structure to break down if they didn't achieve genetic compatibility with another species by their 30th year. Dr. Novak? The voice of her research assistant broke through her thoughts. The new samples from the Proxima expedition have arrived. Selena turned, her holographically projected brown hair swaying naturally with the movement. Thank you, David. I'll be right there. She had perfected her human mannerisms over the years, down to the smallest detail. The research station's corridors hummed with activity as she made her way to her lab. Humans and the few permitted alien species worked side by side, studying the vast diversity of life in the galaxy. Earth had become the center of xenobiological research after first contact 50 years ago, though few knew the real reason behind humanity's rapid advancement in genetic science, the secret help of desperate species like her own. Her lab was her sanctuary, filled with the most advanced equipment Earth could provide. Holographic displays showed complex genetic structures rotating slowly in the air, each one a potential key to understanding cross-species compatibility. Her own research, disguised as general xenobiological studies, was actually her race's last hope. The genetic markers in these samples are fascinating, David said, his young face eager as he pulled up the data. They show remarkable adaptability to different environmental conditions. Selena nodded, her eyes scanning the results. Every new discovery brought her closer to understanding why humans possessed such unique genetic flexibility. Their DNA had an extraordinary ability to adapt and integrate with other species, a trait that might save her people, if she could unlock its secrets in time. But her research was interrupted by an announcement that made her heart skip a beat. Attention all personnel. Please welcome Captain James Harrison, newly appointed head of genetic research. All department heads report to Conference Room A for introduction briefing. Selena froze. A new department head meant increased scrutiny, more questions, more chances for her disguise to fail. She had worked too hard and come too far to let everything fall apart now. Straightening her lab coat, she prepared herself for what could be either her greatest opportunity or her worst nightmare. The conference room was already filled with the station's senior staff when she arrived. The atmosphere was charged with curiosity about their new leader. Then he walked in, and Selena felt something she hadn't expected, a pull, an instant connection that went beyond the physical. Captain Harrison was tall, with features that spoke of both intelligence and determination. His dark eyes held a depth of knowledge that matched his impressive reputation in the field of genetic research. But it was the kindness in his expression that caught her off guard. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying naturally through the room. "We stand at a crucial point in human history. Our understanding of xenobiology isn't just about satisfying scientific curiosity, it's about ensuring the peaceful coexistence of all sentient species." As he spoke, his eyes met hers briefly, and Selena felt a jolt of recognition, not of her true identity, but of a kindred spirit, someone who saw beyond the boundaries of species and tradition. It was both thrilling and terrifying. The meeting continued, but Selena's mind raced with possibilities. Captain Harrison's approach to genetic research aligned perfectly with her secret work. If anyone could help her unlock the secrets of human DNA's adaptability, it would be him. But getting close to him also meant risking exposure. Later that evening, as the station's day cycle dimmed to simulate night, Selena stood again at her favorite observation window. The Earth below had rotated to show its nighttime face, cities glittering like fallen stars. She thought of her people, scattered across the galaxy, each searching for their own solution to their species' curse. Some sought technological answers, others pursued political alliances, but Selina believed that science held the key. Her reflection in the glass flickered slightly, a minor glitch in her holographic disguise that would be imperceptible to human eyes. But it served as a reminder of everything at stake. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival, but for the future of her entire species. Tomorrow, she would begin working more closely with Captain Harrison. She would have to be careful, maintain her distance while still collaborating effectively. One wrong move, one slip in her disguise, and everything would unravel. But as she stared at the Earth below, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The curse that plagued her people had taken so much from them. Their numbers dwindled with each passing generation, as more and more failed to find genetic compatibility before their 30th year. But here, on this station orbiting a planet that had only recently joined the galactic community, Selina sensed she was on the verge of something unprecedented. She pressed her hand against the cool glass one last time before turning away. "I will find a way," she whispered to the stars. "I have to." 2 weeks had passed since Captain Harrison's arrival on the station, and Selina found herself both drawn to and terrified by his brilliant mind. His approach to genetic research was revolutionary, challenging long-held assumptions about cross-species compatibility. Each day brought new opportunities for collaboration, and new risks of discovery. "These cellular adaptation rates are extraordinary," Harrison said one evening, studying the holographic display of their latest experiment. They were alone in the lab, working late as they often did. "It's almost as if the human genome has some sort of universal compatibility marker we haven't identified yet." Selina's heart raced. He was so close to the truth, yet still unaware of its significance. "Perhaps," she replied carefully, "it's related to humanity's unusual evolutionary path." She adjusted the display, highlighting a particular sequence they'd been studying. "No other known species shows this level of genetic flexibility." Harrison turned to her, his dark eyes intense with curiosity. "You know, Dr. Novak, I've read every paper you've published on xenogenetics. Your insights into cross-species adaptation go beyond anything in the field. It's almost as if you have access to information the rest of us don't." For a moment, Selina forgot to breathe. She forced herself to laugh naturally, even as her holographic disguise flickered imperceptibly. "I just look at things differently, Captain. Sometimes an outsider's perspective can reveal patterns others might miss." "James," he said softly. "Please, call me James. We've been working together closely enough to drop the formalities, don't you think?" The warmth in his voice made something flutter in her chest. It had been happening more frequently lately, these moments of connection that went beyond their professional relationship. It was dangerous, she knew, but she couldn't help herself. "Then you should call me Selina." Their work continued late into the night cycle, but something had shifted between them. James began sharing more of his personal theories, including some that could have gotten him ostracized from the scientific community. He believed that humanity's genetic structure held the key to universal cross-species compatibility, a theory that aligned perfectly with what Selina's people had discovered decades ago. "Imagine," he said, pacing excitedly, "if we could unlock this potential. We could help endangered species adapt and survive. We could prevent extinctions, cure genetic diseases, maybe even—" He stopped, looking almost embarrassed. "Sorry, I get carried away sometimes." "Don't apologize," Selina said, fighting the urge to tell him everything. "Your vision is exactly what this field needs." Days turned into weeks, and their research progressed rapidly. Each breakthrough brought them closer to understanding human genetic adaptability, but also closer to discovering her secret. Selina knew she was taking risks, steering their research in directions that might reveal too much, but time wasn't on her side. One day, as they were reviewing their latest results, James made an observation that nearly stopped her heart. "These adaptation patterns, they're similar to something I've seen before. There are rumors in the scientific community about a species that needs genetic compatibility to survive. Their cellular structure is supposed to be remarkably similar to these patterns we're seeing." Selina kept her voice steady through sheer will. "Oh? I haven't heard these rumors." "The Nixians," he said, watching her carefully. "They're almost mythical in xenobiological circles. A species that dies if they don't achieve genetic compatibility with another race by a certain age. Most scientists dismiss it as a legend, but..." He gestured to their data. "What if it's true?" The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Selina could feel her carefully constructed world teetering on the edge of exposure. But before she could respond, the station's emergency sirens began blaring. "Warning! Unauthorized genetic scanning detected in Research Lab 7. Security protocols engaged. All personnel clear the area." Selina's blood ran cold. Research Lab 7 was their lab. Someone had been scanning them, scanning her, without authorization. Her holographic disguise wouldn't hold up under a detailed genetic scan. James was already moving toward the door, but he stopped when he realized she hadn't followed. "Selina? We need to evacuate." She stood frozen, knowing that the moment she stepped into the hallway, she would encounter security officers with more sophisticated scanning equipment. Her disguise would fail, and everything would be exposed. James stepped back toward her, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" In that moment, Selina made a decision that would change everything. She reached for the small device at her neck that maintained her holographic disguise. "James," she said, her voice trembling, "there's something I need to show you." The alarms continued to blare as she deactivated her disguise. The image of a human woman flickered and vanished, revealing her true form, silver-tinted skin that seemed to shimmer in the lab's harsh lighting, hair that moved like liquid starlight, and eyes with pupils that reflected the spectrum of space itself. James staggered backward, his expression a mix of shock, wonder, and something else, something that gave her a glimmer of hope. "I'm Nixian," she whispered. "And I need your help." The silence that followed Selina's revelation seemed to stretch for an eternity. The station's alarms continued their urgent wail, but in that moment, there existed only her and James, standing amid the swirling holographic displays of their research. James moved first, stepping quickly to the lab's control panel. His fingers flew across the interface, and suddenly the alarms fell silent. "Emergency override initiated," he announced, his voice steady despite the situation. "I've locked down the lab. We have maybe 10 minutes before security overrides my commands." Selina felt her knees weaken with relief. He wasn't running, wasn't calling security. Yet. "James, No time," he cut her off, already moving to the data terminals. "Download everything. All our research, all our findings. They'll lock us out of the system soon." His efficient movements belied the tremor in his voice. "How long?" "What? How long until your 30th year?" 1 year, 9 months, and 13 days, she replied automatically, the countdown ever present in her mind as she rushed to help him save their data. "Then we've got no time to waste." He paused in his work, finally meeting her eyes. "I understand now, why your insights were so unique, why you pushed our research in certain directions. You weren't just studying cross-species genetics. You were looking for a way to survive." The sound of boots in the corridor outside made them both freeze. Security teams dispatched to Research Lab 7, a voice crackled over the station's comm system. "Stand by for entry." James grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the lab's secondary exit. "The maintenance tunnels. They connect to the shuttle bay on level C." His touch sent an unexpected surge of warmth through her, despite their dire situation. "I have a private vessel docked there." "But Selina." He hesitated. "If we do this, if we run, we'll be fugitives. The station authorities will assume I'm being coerced or manipulated. Are you sure there's no other way?" Selina touched the skin at her neck where her holographic projector had once rested. "The scan detected my true genetic signature. Even if we stay and try to explain, they'll quarantine me. Best case, I'll become a research subject. Worst case." She didn't need to finish. They both knew how some humans still reacted to the discovery of aliens living secretly among them. The decision made, they slipped into the maintenance tunnel just as the main lab doors began to cycle open. The narrow passage was meant for repair drones, forcing them to crawl on hands and knees through the bowels of the station. Selina's natural bioluminescence provided just enough light to navigate by. "Your skin," James whispered as they crawled. "It's beautiful." Even in their desperate flight, his scientist's curiosity couldn't be contained. "The way it reacts to light, is it some form of crystalline cellular structure?" A smile tugged at her lips despite everything. "You're asking about my biology now?" "Professional habit," he replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice too. "Besides, understanding your physiological structure could be key to solving your genetic compatibility issues." They emerged into a secondary maintenance bay, thankfully deserted. James led them through a maze of stored equipment toward a small airlock. Through its window, Selina could see a sleek research vessel, small but well-equipped. "It's not much," James said as he began the docking protocols, "but it has a fully functional lab. We can continue our research while he was cut off by the station's security alert system springing to life again. "Attention all personnel. 2 researchers from Lab 7 have gone missing after an unauthorized genetic scan detected non-human signatures. All staff are required to report any sightings of Dr. James Harrison or Dr. Selina Novak immediately. They may be traveling together. Exercise extreme caution as the non-human entity may be using coercive measures." Selina felt sick. They were painting her as some kind of monster, and worse, potentially ruining James's career and reputation. "James, you don't have to do this. I can find another way." He silenced her with a look that took her breath away. "When I took this position, I swore to advance our understanding of xenobiology to help all sentient species. I meant it." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. "Besides, do you really think I could walk away from the most important genetic research opportunity in human history?" As they boarded his ship, Selina realized that everything had changed, not just her exposure, but the dynamic between them. There was a new awareness, an electricity that hadn't existed before he knew her true nature. The ship's engines hummed to life as James began launch procedures. "I have contacts," he said, focused on the controls. "Other scientists who share my views on cross-species cooperation. They can help us continue our research off the grid." He glanced at her. "We're close to something, aren't we? In our work before, we were on the right track." "Yes," she confirmed, taking the co-pilot's seat. "Your theories about human genetic adaptability, they're more accurate than you know. My people have been studying humanity since first contact, trying to understand why your species alone seems to hold the key to universal compatibility." Station security finally caught up with them just as the docking clamps released. Warning lights flashed across the ship's console as unauthorized launch protocols were initiated, but James's fingers danced across the controls, overriding them with practiced ease. As their ship broke free from the station, accelerating into the star-filled void, Selina watched Earth's blue sphere shrink behind them. She had spent years on that station, hiding her true nature, working toward salvation for her people. Now she was leaving it all behind, but she wasn't alone. "Where to?" James asked, plotting possible courses on the navigation display. Selina pulled up the data they'd managed to save, already seeing new patterns in their research with her secret knowledge combined with his insights. "Somewhere we can work freely," she said. "Somewhere we can find answers before time runs out." They had become fugitives, but they had also become partners in the truest sense, two beings from different worlds, united in a race against time and biology itself. As their ship vanished into the depths of space, Selina felt something she hadn't experienced since learning of her species' curse, possibility. 3 months into their exile, James and Selina had established a makeshift laboratory in an abandoned research outpost on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The harsh environment outside their reinforced windows provided perfect cover. Few would think to look for fugitives this far from Earth's busy spaceways. The outpost's old equipment, combined with what they'd brought from James's ship, allowed them to continue their research. But living in such close quarters had changed their relationship in ways neither had anticipated. "The human genome's adaptation sequence is remarkable," Selina said one day, studying a holographic model floating between them. Her natural form sparkled in the lab's lights, no longer hidden behind a holographic disguise. "It's almost as if it's designed to." She stopped as James's hand brushed hers while reaching for the controls. These moments had been happening more frequently, casual touches that sent electricity through her silver skin, lingering glances across the lab, conversations that stretched late into the night cycle. The isolation had stripped away the professional barriers between them, revealing something deeper. "Sorry," James murmured, but he didn't move his hand away. Instead, his fingers intertwined with hers, studying the way her skin seemed to shimmer at his touch. "Your cellular response to physical contact, it's fascinating. Everything science to you, isn't it?" Selina meant it to sound teasing, but her voice came out softer, more vulnerable than intended. James looked up, meeting her eyes. "Not everything." The intensity in his gaze made her heart race. "Selina, I." A warning beacon cut through the moment, alerting them to an approaching ship. They sprang apart, rushing to the outpost's security console. A large vessel had entered Titan's orbit, its profile matching Earth security forces. "They've found us," Selina whispered, fear gripping her chest. Not now, not when they were so close to a breakthrough. James was already moving, gathering their most crucial research data. "The thermal vents," he said quickly. "We can use them to mask our heat signatures while we reach the emergency shuttle." They worked efficiently, destroying what they couldn't take and securing what they couldn't leave behind. But as Selina ran final deletions on their computer core, James caught her arm. "Wait," he said, pulling up their latest test results. "Look at this." The screen showed a comparison between his genetic markers and a sample of her tissue. Where most species showed rejection patterns, his cells were actually adapting to hers at a molecular level. "That's impossible," Selina breathed, leaning closer. "The compatibility rate is higher than anything we've ever seen." "How?" "It's not just the science," James said quietly. "These readings, they started changing significantly about a month ago. When we..." He didn't need to finish. They both remembered the night they'd first stayed up talking until dawn, sharing stories of their worlds, their hopes, their fears. "Emotional connection affecting genetic compatibility," Selina whispered. "My people theorized it was possible, but we never had proof." She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing not just the brilliant scientist but the man who had given up everything to help her. "James, I..." The outpost's walls shuddered as a docking attempt rattled the structure. Time had run out. They raced through the outpost's lower levels, following maintenance tunnels that led to a hidden shuttle bay. The emergency vessel there was small, barely more than an escape pod with engines, but it was their only chance. As James prepped the shuttle for launch, Selina secured their research data. But her hands trembled as she worked, her mind racing with the implications of their discovery. The compatibility rates they'd seen weren't just unprecedented, they were revolutionary. And they suggested something her people had never considered, that true genetic compatibility might require more than just biological factors. Selena. James's voice drew her from her thoughts. He stood watching her, his expression conflicted. Before we launch, I need you to know something. He stepped closer, his hand reaching up to cup her face. Where their skin met, tiny sparkles of light danced in response. These past months, working with you, learning about you, it's been more than research for me. Much more. Selena's heart thundered in her chest. Everything she'd been feeling, everything she'd been afraid to acknowledge, was reflected in his eyes. James, we can't. The genetic compatibility tests show exactly what I suspected, he interrupted gently. Our compatibility rates aren't just random science, Selena. They're responding to something deeper. Something real. The outpost shook again as their pursuers tried to breach the upper levels. They had minutes at most. But in that moment, as James's thumb traced patterns on her luminescent skin, time seemed to stand still. I know the risks, he continued. I know we're from different worlds, different species. But I also know that what's growing between us is as real as any scientific fact we've discovered. His other hand found hers, squeezing gently. And I'm not running because of duty or scientific curiosity anymore. I'm running because I can't bear the thought of losing you. Selena felt tears slide down her cheeks, each one catching the light like tiny stars. All her life, she'd been taught that her species' survival depended on cold, scientific calculation. Find compatible genes, ensure reproduction, preserve the species. But here, in this hidden bay on a distant moon, she'd found something her people had never considered: love. The sound of cutting torches above spurred them into action. They boarded the shuttle quickly, strapping in as James initiated emergency launch sequences. As the small craft shot out from its concealed bay, racing away from Titan's orange surface, Selena reached for James's hand. Together, she said softly. Whatever comes next, we face it together. He squeezed her hand in response, and she watched in wonder as tiny sparkles of light danced where their skin met, physical proof of a compatibility that went far beyond mere genetics. As they accelerated into space, leaving their pursuers behind, Selena realized that in running from death, she'd found something worth living for. Now she just had to make sure they survived long enough to explore it. The underground research facility on Europa was the last place anyone would think to look for them. Hidden beneath the moon's icy surface, the abandoned station had become their final refuge. 6 months had passed since their escape from Titan, and Selena's 30th birthday loomed just 1 year away. But something had changed in their research. The genetic compatibility rates between them hadn't just held steady, they'd increased dramatically. Their theory about emotional connection affecting biological compatibility was proving true in ways neither of them had imagined. Look at this, James said, excitement clear in his voice as he pulled up their latest test results. The adaptation isn't just surface level anymore. My DNA is actually restructuring itself to match your genetic patterns, creating perfect compatibility without losing its core human characteristics. Selena studied the results, her silver skin glowing brighter with excitement. It's like your genes are learning from mine, finding ways to bridge the gap between our species. She reached for his hand automatically, and they both watched as the now familiar sparkles danced where their skin met. We need to document everything, James said, his fingers intertwining with hers. This could save your entire species, Selena. If we can prove that emotional bonds enhance genetic compatibility. The station's proximity alarm cut him off. But this time, instead of Earth security forces, the signal was different. Selena's eyes widened as she recognized the signature. It's a Nixian ship, she whispered. But how did they find us? They rushed to the communication array, and Selena's hands trembled as she accepted the incoming transmission. A familiar face appeared on the screen, one she hadn't seen in years. "Sister," the silver-skinned woman said, her eyes showing the same stellar patterns as Selina's. "We've been searching for you since you disappeared from Earth." "Lyra?" Selina stepped closer to the screen, emotion thick in her voice. "How did you find us?" "We've been tracking unusual genetic patterns throughout the solar system," Lyra explained. "When we detected the unique compatibility signatures from Europa, we hoped it was you." Her eyes moved to James, studying him with scientific interest. "I see the rumors about your human companion were true." James stepped forward, his presence steady and reassuring beside Selina. "We've made breakthroughs in understanding cross-species compatibility. Discoveries that could change everything for your people." Lyra's expression grew serious. "That's why we're here. The Council of Elders has been monitoring your work from afar. They're interested in your findings." Selina felt her heart skip. The Council of Elders, the leaders of her people, keepers of their most ancient knowledge. "They know about us?" "They know enough to want to help," Lyra said. "They're offering amnesty, protection from Earth authorities, and full access to our genetic research facilities." She paused, her expression softening. "They also think you might have found what our people have been searching for all along, proof that true compatibility requires more than just biological factors." James and Selina exchanged glances. Everything they'd discovered, everything they'd theorized about emotional connections affecting genetic compatibility, it could all be properly tested and documented with the Nixians' advanced facilities. "There's more," Lyra continued. "Earth's scientific community has been in an uproar since your disappearance. Your research has sparked a debate about cross-species relations and compatibility. Many are calling for changes in how we approach xenobiology. You've started something, sister. Something that could bridge not just genetic gaps, but cultural ones as well." The implications were staggering. Their work could not only save the Nixian species but also revolutionize how humans and aliens interacted on a biological level. "What do you say?" James asked softly, squeezing Selina's hand. "Ready to change the galaxy?" Selina looked at him, this human who had given up everything to help her, who had shown her that love could transcend the boundaries of species and genetics. In his eyes, she saw not just their past struggles, but their future possibilities. "Together," she said, both to him and to her sister on the screen. "We'll do it together." The next months passed in a blur of research and breakthroughs. Working with the full support of Nixian scientists, they proved that emotional bonds could indeed enhance genetic compatibility between species. James's DNA had adapted to Selina's in ways that should have been impossible, driven by something more powerful than mere biology. As Selina's 30th birthday approached, they made their findings public, to both human and alien societies. The revelation that love could literally change genetics at a molecular level sparked a revolution in xenobiology. Other species began coming forward with similar experiences, hidden for fear of persecution. On the evening before her 30th birthday, Selina stood with James in the observation dome of the Nixian research station, watching the stars. Her skin glowed with health, showing no signs of the degradation that had claimed so many of her people. "The latest tests confirm it," James said, pulling her close. "The compatibility is permanent. You're going to be fine." The relief in his voice matched the joy in her heart. "We did more than find a cure," Selina said, watching the sparkles dance between them where their skin touched. "We proved that love isn't just an emotion, it's a force capable of changing the very building blocks of life itself." "Speaking of change," James said, suddenly looking nervous. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a ring that seemed to be made of both earth metals and Nixian crystals. "I had this made. I know it's not traditional for either of our species, but—" Selina silenced him with a kiss, her skin illuminating the dome with pulses of joyful light. When they finally parted, she whispered, "Yes." As they stood together, their figures silhouetted against the vast expanse of space, Selena realized they had done more than break a curse or make a scientific breakthrough. They had proven that love could transcend the boundaries of species, genetics, and even space itself. The curse that had haunted her people for generations had led them to this moment, to the discovery that survival didn't just depend on biological compatibility, but on the courage to open their hearts to possibilities beyond their understanding. As James slipped the ring onto her finger, the crystals within it resonated with her bioluminescence, creating a symphony of light that reflected their unique bond. They had started as fugitives, became partners in research, and now stood as living proof that love could literally change the universe, one genetic code at a time. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities, for them, for their species, and for all those who dared to believe that love could bridge the gaps between the stars themselves.